Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Code Live with Google Cloud, our 2 million token season. I am joined by my lovely colleague, Jennifer.
Hi.
And today we are going to take another step forward from what Jen and Mark were doing last week, where I've taken the service, the ingestion service that they were working on stream, converted it to Java, and thanks to Jen's lovely suggestion, I'm going to try to get some actual work done, some sample maintenance work that we would normally do as advocates or contribute with in some way by taking a sample that already exists and seeing if we can migrate it to a new Java version. And as a bonus, we have somebody who has already attempted this. So we're going to see if Gemini can kind of coach us through the act of getting this done, and then kind of compare it to what an actual human has written to see what we think of the two contributions side by side. And hopefully by the end of this, we'll be, pushing a PR or suggesting a merge on theirs, and it should be interesting. But rather than focusing on the absolute breadth of how many things we can fit in here, we're trying to see how we can get some work done with this large context window in our back pocket. So yeah, how's that sound, Jennifer?
It sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to this because it's basically, if you joined us last week, and if you didn't, you can always go back and watch that later. Last week, we took everything piled in. It was like, tell us some interesting things we could do. This week, we're going to go opposite, and we're going to be like, here's a specific thing, and help us figure out what we can do. In our environment, we are a small mighty team doing all the things and trying to write samples. And so you might have the same experience where you're managing a project and you're trying to figure out, how do I document it? How do I create samples and help people do this? So you can use some of these same approaches that we're going to try out and see what happens. So yeah, let's get to it. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So actually, I think we're going to start by talking through the not new and improved, but different ingestion service that we're going to be using today as our kind of test bench, or having Gemini just kind of speak its mind. I'm going to have to dial up my font.
Oh yes, I so cannot see.
Yeah. Increase font size. Font size. There we go, font. We're going to say 25. We want the people in the back to be able to see. How's that?
Maybe it's a little tiny bit bigger.
Yeah, okay, we can do that.
A little tiny bit bigger.
Let's do it. 35.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay. That's perfect.
So we're really going to be living in this one file. It's a simple kind of Spring Boot service, but really, I just want any kind of Java service that would be easy to manage dependencies and run through. So yeah, we have a few of the same constants at the top. We have our location, we have our model name. We're using 1.5 Pro for this. And then we have the project we're actually drawing Gemini access from. Fantastic. And then this will just set up the context that our app runs in. But we are going to build a bit of Gemini context with whatever sample of files we're using. And then we're going to print those files, to print whatever lines we're taking, to make sure that we're talking about the same thing, that we're looking at the same code base or snippet of the code base that Gemini is considering and sending in to our request. It'll tell us how many lines that is, and then we'll give it our prompt with our suggested change, what we're trying to do, what we're trying to change. In our case, it will be what do we have to do? What do we have to do in order to convert this sample from Java 11 to Java 17?
Was that 11 or 8?
You know what? Oh yeah, this is the wrong sample. This was the right path for the sample. I'm gonna have to update that link.
Awesome.
Yeah, the right path is a Java 17 sample. And so then scrolling down, the call Gemini function, which we're calling on line 27, is just going to define an endpoint and make a simple Gemini call to it. This isn't completely done. We're going to have to figure out. Well, actually, yeah, we'll try this out live. We'll kind of make sure it's all working. And then this is actually building the Gemini context. In case we only want to listen to Java files, we have the option to filter on that, or we could allow all files if we wanted to try to update readmes with new config steps and things like that. And this is just to print the top few lines out of whatever selection we have. So that should all be pretty straightforward. I'm going to jump over to the repo and show the actual change we're trying to make. So here's the original contribution from somebody. And what they did is they converted the App Engine flexible sample for cloud storage from Java 11 to Java 17. So if I go to that same sample, by going to flexible, you can see there's a Java 11 folder, but there's no 17 folder. So we're going to, like this PR created.
There's a start, but there's like a single subdirectory there. So there's only a Micronaut Hello World instead of all of the samples. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, we have the 17 folder, but it doesn't have flexible in it. Doesn't have all the samples. So this is one more contribution to say, here's the cloud storage sample. And so we're gonna try to ask Gemini to like take this folder, the Java 11 folder, and go to cloud storage and create a Java 17 version of it. And while we're doing that, we're gonna look for any kind of like language idiosyncrasy, see if it's doing any old usage patterns, to see if we can kind of get Gemini's help to really punch up the migration rather than just kind of doing the first cut for us. So we'll see how that goes. And this is something that I have considered as an interesting use case, but haven't actually put my hands on. And so it's gonna be interesting to do that live with everybody. So we're gonna go back to our ingestion service here. And this is handy because it's going to, we're stopping in the middle of the suggestions we're getting for code completion and making sure that what we're sending in is what we think it is. And we have easy control over our context here. So I'm going to update the link to actually reflect the folder we're interested in. So it'll be the flexible Java 11 cloud storage folder. I'm going to grab that from GitHub and then plop it in here. So now we're focused on the flexible Java 11 cloud storage folder. Fantastic. Let's just make sure that we're getting those lines and getting a response from Gemini. Let me actually familiarize myself with one of the first files it'll find. We can expect to see a main.java that runs component scan and searches the cloud storage folder. So that should come up in the response. Let's see if that is what the ingestion service returns.
This is actually really interesting because this is, when I look at it and I think about it, it's like often we have samples. When people think about samples, they're thinking about a single file, and here's like this snippet of code. But for things like App Engine, where it's basically a service that's letting you bundle a bunch of stuff and like deploys all this stuff for you, it's kind of got like the App Engine definition. It's got like, there's this main.java, then there's a directory like a web app where it's got like a index.html, and so it's like this whole bundle of stuff, and it's not just a single file.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
A decent amount of variety, and I'd also like to see what it can do in terms of like, because with App Engine, if folks aren't familiar, it's a platform as a service application or service feature or service. So you'll get the actual, you have files to configure how App Engine works with your code, but then you actually have the actual code itself, which is a much smaller portion of it. So you'll have several files that are configuring things like caching, or if you use one of the older runtimes like Mail, whereas you'll have your actual app code separately. And so we can filter out the config files, we could focus on the config files, and I think that'll add some more texture to this too. So on this first response, I did get a response from Gemini, but it wasn't focused on the file that I had in mind. So it said contents of, and it locked onto an upload servlet test, which isn't particularly helpful for what we're doing. I think I'd rather have it like just take a look at the upload servlet itself. So I just grabbed the path to the upload servlet directly. So we're not grabbing the whole folder, but that's okay. I'm just going to see what it thinks about this file and what it would offer for like language level changes on this file. A lot of it is imports at the start, but it is actually locked onto the correct file. Good. And it's pulled in 69 lines out of this, which is interesting because I did say to limit it at 50, so that maybe a problem with that function. It's correctly identifying that it is a cloud storage sample. It's talking about dependency management. Yes. Would we need to? It's probably going to suggest changing the version. No. So it says check for a POM or build Gradle. Reasonable step, but not necessary for us. No obvious Java 11 specific code. Probably true, because it is largely backwards compatible, but there are some stylistic changes that I'm hoping that it could suggest. Suggests writing better tests, considering using Jakarta EE instead of Java EE, which would make sense with that language change. But yeah, it didn't really give me anything specific to change on this file. Let me take a look at the source file. It is rather short, so that would make sense that it wouldn't have a ton to offer, but even things like list initialization is something that could become easier between those versions, especially when initializing an empty list. There is something that we could do. But in any case, I want to see what it can do for helping me to create the whole folder. So let me see if I can get it to focus on the cloud storage folder and start with the POM and see if it would make any changes. So I'm going to have to change the ingestion service to not ignore files that don't end with Java. So as long as it's a regular file, it should bring it in. And this is saying to print the top N lines.
Yeah, it's just like it tells us that it's reading the files. That was our original logic last week. It's not that we only want it to grab just the top. Mm-hmm. It was just making sure we're actually seeing those.
Right. That's fair, and it is definitely seeing those files. So I guess it is partially, doing its job. Yeah, let me focus in on this POM and see. In order for us to, I'm going to change the prompt a little bit too. So flexible. This is normally how I would start if I was trying to convert this manually. I would say, okay, we'll go to the build config file, and I would look up the App Engine 17 docs, App Engine 11, and say, what am I required to do differently between these two runtimes? So let's see what Gemini offers for that. What do we have to do in order to convert this App Engine sample from the Java 11 runtime to Java 17? Let's see if that makes it any clearer. And focusing on the POM, let's see what it does.
Oh, it's this red stuff.
Gave me an error. Unix exception. On line 53, let's see what that says. Oh, okay. So it doesn't like the commented out dot filter. Fair enough. Oh, no such file exception. I disagree. I think that file is there. Flexible. Oh, flexible. That would do it. So then the commented out filter is probably fine. It'll be convenient later. But yes, we want to make sure that we're properly pointing to the file. So we're likely going to have to, how long is this POM? It's a couple hundred lines. I'm going to have to increase that limit if we're going to ingest the whole thing. Or rather, it seems like it did. Okay. So we are looking at the right POM. And let's see what Gemini thinks. So response. To convert the App Engine sample from Java 11 to 17, you need to do the following. Change the Maven compiler and source, compiler source and target to 17. That's not a specific App Engine thing, but it is like a Java Maven thing. That would just change the output of the jar that I'm building, or WAR. Update the App Engine Maven plugin version if necessary. 280, which already supports a Java 17. I believe that's correct. Let me check that out, actually. 280 Java runtime support. Because I don't want to.
Awesome.
Let's see, Java 8 App Engine first generation.
What was it? What was this recommendation saying?
It was saying that the plugin version, well, actually the plugin is a different thing than the actual runtime itself. I guess this is Flex, so, but yeah.
How would I figure out what that was?
How would you figure out what the App Engine plugin is?
Well, yeah, which version I do?
What is the right version to use? Okay, yeah, that's a good question. So I'll have to look for not the App Engine support schedule, but the App Engine Maven plugin. Supported versions. So the Maven plugin is just to load your jars into App Engine more easily. But let's see, what are the supported versions? Yeah, build and deploy your app to App Engine.
See, this is great. We're doing this live, and we don't know the answer, and that's like a good thing to know. You can note that.
And Gemini gave me an answer, I believe. Let me see. Maven plugin. Let me see if Maven Central has a response for that. App Engine Maven plugin. So 280 is not the latest, but it is, aside from a minor version, the latest. So let me go to the README here. Reference documentation. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that's a widely published answer, actually. That's interesting.
Oh, so interesting. I actually asked Gemini,
yeah,
what should we do? And it said there's two plugins. One is the com.google.cloud.tools App Engine Maven plugin. That's the newer one. And there's an older one that is same name. It's com.google.appengine. And I'm curious which one we're using.
It's the tools one.
Yeah. The tools one. Awesome. So it is the correct one.
Yeah. And this isn't gonna stop us necessarily. Okay, as of no, okay. Cloud SDK version. It doesn't seem like it's broadly restricted on Java versions. So yeah, I can't imagine that. I think if it's a supported Java runtime, the App Engine Maven plugin would support it, because it's not really drawing on specific language features. It's just kind of taking your built jar, your built artifact from the build tool, and uploading it to App Engine, and then helping it to either run against it or deploy. So I think it makes sense that there's no documented like supported versions, but yeah, interesting. I don't know where Gemini would have got that then. Well, I guess it didn't say, it didn't make a specific claim. That seems correct. Hard to verify, but correct. Ensure you're using the latest version of the plugin for optimal compatibility. We aren't. We're one minor version short, but that's okay. Updating the Spring Boot version is a good step. For Java 17, we should be using 3.x. We absolutely could. And that's valid. That's a major version upgrade, so that would be a Spring Framework upgrade as well. We may not do that in this PR, but that's a fair suggestion. Address any deprecated APIs. There are a couple, but I think between Java 11 and 17, it's like the GenAI library that isn't very, or API that isn't very advisable to use anyways. I could quiz it on what may have been deprecated, but I think I want to stay focused on getting this task completed. Test thoroughly. Yeah, okay. So it made some reasonable suggestions for upgrading like a servlet app that is being served on App Engine, but not specifically this one. It didn't advise me on how to like change the config to generate a new one. Let's see if I can get it to get it closer. So yeah, one of the first things I would do is try to make sure that I'm initializing the app properly and that I'm defining the runtime to be a valid OS and to use the specific runtime that I want, not defaulting to 11 or anything like that. So let me change my prompt a little bit. What can we do? I want to say like, what files can I create? Well, actually, let me see if I can consider the whole folder. Although it's just looking for regular files and it's only doing 50 lines. So I'll just say from this build file, how could I prepare a config file for to convert to Java 17 instead of Java 11? And we'll see what it thinks. What I'm hoping is that it'll advise me to create, but I believe you can still do this with POM configuration, but I'm hoping it'll advise me to create an app.yaml instead. Contents of the storage POM. Great. To convert it to 17, you need to modify the property section of the POM. Update the compiler version. Yeah. Update the Spring Boot version. Yeah. Okay. No, that's not the. It is largely providing. I guess I didn't give it the context of this as an App Engine app.
That's true. So, taking it a step back.
Yeah.
You're a Java expert. You're like you're a Java expert. I'm such a newbie at the Java, and I haven't done it in so long. If someone were to ask you, what are the things you would consider that you need to address? Like, what has changed from Java 11 to Java 17? What would you offer up? Because I'm sure there's like a ton, and like it wouldn't be specific. But I'm curious, like as a human with this expertise, what?
Yeah, absolutely. So for 11 to 17, as far as like the experience when you're developing. They're like one of the big things that you'd miss from 8 to 17 would be like being able to use Lambda functions. Or if you're even targeting below 7, you wouldn't be able to like build reactive code by like using Lambda functions like this. This would not be valid below Java 8. I believe it is supported in Java 11. So that's something that's different. There's also something that, as far as like tasks you do generally day to day over and over again, being able to use like collections to initialize like empty lists and initialize certain lists like array lists, it's more cumbersome in 11 than 17. And there are some like human quality of life improvements that are going on between 11 and 17, but it's not quite as drastic as some of the other major version jumps. And if you go like really 8 to 11 is more meaningful than 11 to 17, but there are still some wins to be had. For that reason, you know, it would be ideal if we were making more than one LTS version jump, but there's still something to be had here. Let's see. If I poke through some files, some more things might jump out at me. But for now, I'm wondering if we can get it to just focus in on generating us an app.yaml. So let me try to change that prompt. From this build file of a Java 11 app engine app, how can I prepare a config file to convert it to Java 17 instead of Java 11? I could specifically mention like that I want to configure a runtime. That may help. Let's see. Okay, yeah. No, it seems to be not considering this is a necessary step, which, to be fair, I believe you can just still run your app engine. Let me see. Java 17 app engine flexible. There's a page that shows if you need to have an app.yaml or not. And Java 17 may be one of the ones where you don't. Java 17. Runtime lifecycle stages.
This is one of those interesting spaces where it's like, when we think about how people do things in their environments and what they're using documentation for, and all these considerations when you're thinking about like, what does the sample need to show? How does the sample show it? What's the minimum you need? How do you keep it up to date to what people need? And it becomes this big challenge. And as you're doing things, I'm like thinking about it. I'm like, like if the app.yaml is no longer needed, or if it is needed in this new case, like, what would people's pre-existing state be, and what would the least surprising experience be? I feel like it's kind of like, assume someone doesn't have it, but we often have to think about how do you migrate from one thing to another, and that would be an explicit difference.
You do, and it does complicate migrations. And so yeah, here we are on the docs, and you do actually have to specify a runtime and operating system, as I thought, for 11 and 17 specifically. Going from 8 to 11, for 11 or older, you don't have to. You have the option to either have on a Java 8 App Engine app, you can just use your pom.xml with a couple parameters as your build file. But in this, you have to use an app.yaml that'll specify your operating system and runtime version. So, okay, with that in mind, Gemini is missing one requirement that we have here. But it's possible that it just doesn't understand that this is an App Engine sample, especially since it may be ignoring readmes. Let me just ask it what it thinks, what it understands this folder to be. Well, but I am limiting the lines. Yeah, let me ask it. I think I want to stay on task and just generate a an app.yaml that would allow me to deploy this application to App Engine.
Do we want to say it to a flexible instance?
Maybe.
Or
yeah. I wonder if it can infer that. No, you're right, because it could be standard. Yeah, flexible. App Engine flexible. So where are we at? Am I missing the response? Oh, yeah, there we go. Okay, so it just responded directly in YAML. That's why it didn't really look like a regular response.
It looked like the printout, like it's seeing the file. Oh, interesting.
So, okay. No, that's not ideal. It's saying runtime Java environment flex, runtime config. I think it's got the fields largely right, but not below runtime config. We need a few other things. And handlers, we don't need to get into routing necessarily. So we're gonna build off of that.
Is that a valid configuration, the runtime config, the JDK?
JDK is not. No, it'd be
Okay,
operating.
I was like, that doesn't look right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You define the operating system and the runtime version that you want. So I think I would rather, since this isn't a chat where it'll keep the context and keep building on the response, I'm just going to take this as a first cut and then update it myself. So let me go. I'm actually going to have the repo itself open as well. So let me open that. Repos, Java doc samples. Yeah, that'll do. Let me also change my font size. Oh, 35. Perfect. And I'm going to go to flexible. Flexible cloud storage. It's Java 8, but it's close enough. Java 11. Cloud storage. So this is the folder we're really living and working in. I'm going to create a copy so we can have a Java 17 cloud storage. And we're going to start working on, bit by bit, what we're advised to change by Gemini. So I'm going to say app.yaml for the first file. And it suggested more than just the word cloud storage. So copy. So we don't need the handlers here. And as we discussed, JDK is not valid. It's operating system. And then we have, which I believe there's only one valid option, which is Ubuntu 22. And then, well, I guess you could do all kinds of, if you wanted to supply your own image, you could do all kinds of things, I believe. But for runtime version, it would be 21. No, 17. Fantastic. And now we're going
So we don't need the handlers?
No, the handlers are for function routing. So if you're, or URL routing, if you're trying to like direct requests for like maybe a static file or like a request to a certain place in your application, that's where you'd use your handlers. I think actually caching and like static file routing is where you do it a lot.
Cool.
So, okay. We didn't quite get Gemini to give us the full config file, but I am curious if I can get it to supply some changes to like parts of the service that I would do differently in Java 17. So let's take a look. Let's just poke around through the code base since we have it open here. Java 17. Oh, we have it in the wrong place actually. It should be under App Engine, app.yaml. Oh wait, there is an existing app.yaml. Interesting.
Yeah, that's the 11 one.
Yes, but maybe with this as a base, it would provide a better response.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it. That's one of the things I'm wondering, because it did I've got it open up here and I'm like, this is one of those areas where when you think about what AIs can give you, being able to train it and provide the set of responses or what the response shape looks like or something is to start from and how you would do that. But that's like future thing. But yes, there is an existing one in 11 and it does have the handler.
It does have the handler.
That's why I was like, oh, well, maybe that's an improvement that maybe it doesn't need that.
Maybe. Okay, so then I guess it did actually, it got more of the file right than I thought. That's good to know. Okay, so I'm going to take one more stab at this with this.
Well, so this is what's in. So it says, like, the original sample says this field is required but ignored. Yeah. I was thinking that it's only required if you put handlers there, but maybe you don't need to have handlers at all, like that section.
It is possible.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the answer would be. Maybe because, from my understanding, handlers wasn't required, but it could be one of those things that's kind of passed down in the code base where nobody questions it for a long time and then it sticks around. But yeah, we'll test it. Cool. So how would you update this file to instead this build file? To support Java 17 instead of Java 11? Question mark. So, okay, I think that's the output. Maybe not. Response. To update it to 17, here's what I would do. Yeah, change the runtime version to 11, from 11 to 17, correct. It missed the operating system though. So that is, yeah, closer, but no cigar. That's okay. I am still going to, I'm glad that you pointed out that pre-existing App Engine YAML file, because I'm going to use that as our new basis rather than, well, I guess I'll just edit this existing one. I don't need to have a second one. It'll be Ubuntu 22, and our runtime version will be 17. Fantastic. And
missing a 2.
Ah, good.
Awesome.
Great. So, okay, we have our build file in place. Let's take a look at our main and our servlet and see if there's anything we would change. So yeah, that's an opportunity, but it's not the biggest. How about in the web app? Well, it's just HTML. In our tests, yeah.
So nothing's screaming out at you, like?
Nothing's screaming at me. There is a newer way you can initialize lists, but it's a singleton list. It's just not that interesting. But yeah, I mean. So
then this makes me question: should we, instead of, because right now the architecture of these samples, if you look at the directory, it's like Java doc samples, flexible, Java-11, cloud storage, based on the content here. And it seems like it's almost all this stuff is just, it's not complex enough to sort of require different versioning. And maybe there's just like the Java version. Does that seem right? Or could there be like different, because like the app YAML definitely is different. And I'm just wondering about bundling stuff all together like this so we get duplication.
Duplication as far, I think I missed your
Oh, and each, like, because this is, if we look at the flexible samples, there's like cloud storage, data store, pub sub. So there's like so many of these, and they're all like, maybe like, we'll end up with like, there's a Java 11 version, a Java 17 version, a Java 22 version. It's like, you could have duplicates, but it seems like maybe the complexity of the sample, the language isn't
there. It isn't really quite pushed to like, because we don't have any like complex pattern matching we do differently. There's a difference between 11, 17 there. There could be like if we had like an instance of, but there's not. Yeah. So this does seem like it's simple enough that maybe Gemini did get the right answer by saying largely they're okay. They are similar. But I think there may be other issues in the code base that we can take a look at, but I want Gemini's help to ensure that this is a working migration, and I'd like to get the side by side for what we come up with the rest of it. So continuing to work down the rest of the sample here, our main is very simple. Upload service. There's one arguable one. Let me just see what Gemini thinks, actually. Let me see if Gemini spots something that I don't see. So I'm going to go to the upload servlet Java. Path here, path from content root. And say for flexible / getting down to the upload servlet. Do you have any recommendations for upgrading the sample from Java 11 to Java 17?
What is our further down, like are we giving it any other context? Like you're a like software engineer.
We do have a deeper prompt here.
We need to take away each file is demarcated, right?
That's true. That's true. We're not passing the. Well, are we? No. Contents of. Well, no.
I guess we are.
We do.
Never mind.
The contents of each file, but it's not. And well, it's slightly different from that. But considering all the content given to you, we are trying to focus on one file at a time, so it's less relevant. But yeah, we do have the same persona as context. And I'd like to see if Gemini can surprise me if it comes up with something that I'm not seeing. There are no code changes required to upgrade from 11 to 17. Check your dependencies, check for deprecated APIs, check for testing. Yeah, and that's valid. It would technically work side by side. But I'd like to see if I can get there's definitely some changes we can make with the test, because these testing libraries change frequently. There's a lot more whens, and even like the static imports present a bit of an opportunity. So this may be more interesting than the servlet itself. Let's see what it thinks of the servlet test. Flexible. So it read, I believe, all 76 lines in the servlet test. Yes. And as far as a response, uses Mockito for test and stubbing in Java 11. Yeah. So
Ooh.
you can do some different things with the mocking, with the static imports. So
We were just talking about mocking and stuff today. So yay. We weren't thinking about Java. We were talking about Java at least. This is good.
yeah. Replace mocked static. Yeah. Now this is something that you could do, but I'm not sure if I would. If I was reviewing this, I'm not sure if I'd rather have you use method handles lookup than the provided mocked statics. But let's see. I want to see what Gemini recommends me to do. Direct method invocation. Yeah, we could do that. I want to try it out. We're going to try it. We're going to try out what Gemini suggests for an updated test method. So method handles lookup for any of them, sure. So let's go ahead and go to our updated upload servlet test. And so what it's suggesting is, rather than having our mocked statics, I'm just going to drop that import and then fix everywhere that required it. So I think with that gone, none of the like .when will. This is going to be a bit of a knot to untangle. We'll see if Gemini can help me with that, because with mocked static here, these are all. I guess a static import is a very Java concept. Like, you are importing a chunk of a function to be present in your current context, which means that you don't have to retype it. So before this .when, you should be typing like Makito .when. So it's like it's providing the class that I'm talking about, so I can just use its like child functions and methods without having to refer to the class itself. Very helpful in situations like tests where you're constantly referring to the same testing framework over and over again. And this saves you typing several lines or halves of lines over and over again. So without mocked static, we're going to.
So it's almost like it needs a. How would you improve this? Not just like refactor this. Instead of like changing the structure, just refactor or something.
This is more of a complete refactor, but it's an interesting one. So I want to see how much support Gemini can provide. Use method handles for mocking the static methods. Lookup. Yeah, it's just. Okay, so it still suggests using. It is very much like a performance refactor as well. So by using Java's built-in mechanisms, you reduce reliance on Makito's internal workings, potentially improving test execution and reducing the risk of compatibility issues. That could be true if Makito was like a new kind of pre-version 1 framework, but it's very old and reliable. But I want this to be the main difference between our commit and the existing one. So we're going to try getting method handles rather than using the mocked static approach. So let me just ask Gemini specifically. Refactor this file to use mocked to avoid using I guess.
Can you scroll up a little bit?
Yes, absolutely.
A little bit more.
Okay, cool. I guess it's already given me the keyword of method handles, so I guess I'm not going to be shy about using that in this prompt. So refactor this file to use to avoid using mock static in favor of the Java 17 method handle approach. I may give it some more prompts to like separate out each test, because I think this this is one of those like multi-part post tests where you kind of set up your test data and then refer to it and ensure that it's doing what you're wanting. And some people would say that you should split up tests like this into multiple tests, but we'll see if we can just do this in one pass first. I wonder if it'll recommend doing that. Response. Contents of this, yes. Response, here we are. So it's recommending didn't change anything. Oh wait, no, there we go. Use method handle instead of mock static, but I think it's using a blend of the two. Maybe not. Let me pull the whole suggested test into our other IDE and see what it thinks. And so method handles lookup, get default instance method for storage options. Find virtual. Okay, so it's, yeah, rather than us calling out, like whenever we want to call for storage options, instead we're going to get this mocked version. But how often do we do that? So I don't know if we actually do it anywhere. So this may be, we have storage class, do we have storage options? We don't use storage, so I think it missed the mark a little bit. Because even in the previous sample, before I change anything, let's servlet test. Oh wait, no, it does use mocked static. Did it change anything? Let me see. This is somewhat disorienting. Let me copy this, put it in the Scratch file, and compare what's on GitHub with my clipboard. So taking a closer look at what Gemini suggested. Oh yeah, method handles rather than mock static, yes. Let me review this side by side, or top bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not swap sides. Okay, unified viewer. So,
oh, that makes it easier to see.
Yeah. So we're mocking storage options in a different way. It is longer.
I was going to say it's longer, but is it actually doing it right? Like I see it's got the try catch, which I would assume would have already been in there. But is that like a standard practice that
it's not
in Java?
It is pretty standard practice, but it's not the best throwable here. Like you're just saying catch any throwable, which is even worse than just like catching any exception. You're just saying whatever comes out of this, just throw it into a runtime exception, which isn't great exception handling. I've seen a lot worse on test exception handling, but it's not great. I might ask it to touch that up. And then I might also, like, this seems, I just want to run this because I don't know if this is actually, it seems valid, but I don't know if it'll actually work or if it'll be any more performant than the mocked static in this case. Maybe if we were doing it hundreds of times and we had a test that was flaky because it was taking so long to run through all of these hundreds of calls to storage options. But even a deep stub, which would, instantiate more of an object than your regular stub for mocking out a function, shouldn't take that many resources. So it seems like a bit of a nitpick, but I'm curious to see the feasibility of this provided function. So we're going to try this mocked static approach. We're going to run the test and we're going to see what it thinks. And if it does work, then we may call that our contribution to this and compare it to the whole existing PR. So let me just run this test here. There's a README. Even clean package app engine test, I believe, is the goal. Let's see if I remember my app engine plugin goals. So that is too small of a console. I'm going to use the IntelliJ console. Here we are, pwd. We're going to go to the root of this folder, cloud storage, copy path from content root, and we're going to say there's no package Maven wrapper, so we're just going to say Maven clean package app engine test. No Maven. I disagree, but maybe it's because, well, no. Maven W. I may just have to generate a Maven wrapper and bring it in here. Although there is a decent reason why we don't use a Maven wrapper in this folder. It's just my terminal shell here. Let me see. Well, this is a new laptop, and I may just not have Maven installed here. That's a shame. Well, I may. No, I don't think there's another way for me to test this. I'll have to. Yeah, I'll have to quickly install that. Well, let me actually compare this to, while we're doing that, let me compare this to the existing PR. Because I think it actually would come out pretty similar. Let me commit what we have and then compare them on GitHub. With App Engine, or with Gemini, kind of suggesting changes to the app.yaml and suggesting one, we'll call it major change to the servlet test. We're going to try to push it up and see what we think. Status and dot. The joys of streaming on a new machine as well, but it had to happen eventually. Creating Java 17 version cloud storage sample. No, I'd like you to do it with my HTTPS. No. Well, we might have to do it through GitHub here, or through IntelliJ. Let me compare. I can compare these manually as a starting point. So I have here the existing PR, or rather I had here a few screens ago. Let me just go find that. There we go. So files changed. We're going to compare we didn't change the README, so it's likely going to be the same. Indeed it is. The POM, did we change anything? No, it did recommend that we change the compiler version to 17, but we didn't. That was not the change I was looking for, so I ended up going past it. But let's go ahead and do that.
Did it recommend any other updates? So did it like say like these dependencies should probably get updated?
It said make sure you're using the latest version of App Engine. And it also said update to major version 3 with Spring Boot, which is fair. But going into a Spring Boot update, it may be low touch, but it would have been a different can of worms, so I didn't embark on that. Let's see. In this version, this existing PR didn't do it either, because Spring Boot 2 is going to be largely compatible with newer versions. So it's not necessary, but it's a good idea. I think its other suggestion was making sure that all of our dependencies are also up to date, which is broad, and they do generally. So yeah, I think the compiler and source version were the main change here. So I'll add that to the PR actually. There we go. And, or no, it didn't. There we go. So we've added that to the PR now. Let me just go back to comparing it. We have that change in our POM. Other than that, they look very similar. Let me actually get the line-by-line comparison. Company clipboard, because this is one of the main files in our PR. Compare with clipboard. So white space changes. A bomb version update, which is good, actually. That would have been a good one to catch. Mockito JUnit Jupyter versus inline. JUnit Jupyter is a newer version of Mockito. We did mention that the mocking libraries change often, but I believe this one is like JUnit Jupyter would still be usable with 17. And let's see what else we've got for differences. The app.yaml, I do want to see if this is actually equivalent. Compare with clipboard. Yep, almost exactly the same. Fair, we did have to get involved with that manually. And as far as the main file, I don't think there was any change. This is really just a Spring Boot application start command. Yeah, the upload servlet, no change. The test was the main difference. And so what we're going to do is, as soon as we're off stream here, I'm going to go ahead and push this up. And we're going to see if this, what the team thinks about this Gemini suggested approach to save a little bit of time when executing the tests.
So I have a question for you. So I tried to figure out how to share my screen, but it was not happy. It wouldn't let me choose this one. I actually went to Gemini and did the chat approach and shared the file that we are looking at. And I was like, how would you improve it? And it told me the provided test is already quite good, but there are a few areas for improvement, more descriptive test names, which, yes, I like that. It was saying explicitly setting the content type expectation in the test instead of just checking for the 200 OK. That's actually really good because you want to check to make sure the content is like text/HTML. And so if you were actually doing this, if someone were to copy our example of like, oh, this is where you start from testing, like testing matters in samples too. This was interesting. It says using content instead of forwarded URL. It's using forwarded URL, that implying that Spring is forwarding the request internally to another servlet or controller to handle the static file. Is that valid? Should we be using content instead of forwarded URL? Or because this is a managed service, it really should be using forwarded URL?
That's an interesting one. I don't, to my knowledge, when you're running Spring inside of an App Engine app, it is just as similar, just the same as any other servlet you would be putting inside of App Engine. So I don't think that like Spring's web server creates a special case here. I've never heard anybody ask about like if you should use content versus forwarded URL. Yeah, I don't think I have an answer for you, but
I was just interesting because it gave me some ideas about how to look at this separately. But it's literally in the mock. It's like get and expected is okay and expect forwarded URL index.html. And it's saying use content there instead of the forwarded URL, which
I don't think I'm seeing the reference to forwarded URL you are.
Is it? Are you on the test?
Yes.
Maybe I pasted the wrong file line. Or maybe because the first thing I'd said is explain this, and maybe it didn't like that. Oh, you know what? It's in the there's another test file. I grabbed from the static file test. So I totally pulled from the wrong file. Manual error. But it's actually for testing it's still Spring Boot. And it's using forward URL. So makes me think something else. There's lots of little improvements. So you use Code Assist, right? Or you've used it some?
I have used it, yeah, quite a bit.
Would that be a use case of like pulling into your environment and like taking a look at stuff? Would it also provide that sort of like?
It would provide a different kind of recommendation. It would have more context on the folder and that sort of approach. We could try that. Let me actually. I've.
Oh, cool! You got the pull request in there.
Yeah, I'd like to get the pull request fully sent off, but I'd have to. I'll have to create. I didn't actually start off of the proper like basis with a fork, so I'll have to do that now.
I think you can branch.
I can branch? Okay.
Yeah, you should have privilege to branch.
There we go. And I can just push it as is. I'm not sure sure if I do have privileges, but let's see. And then I can just kind of make the PR from something different. Okay, yeah, it says I have a 403 when creating a new branch.
Oh, interesting.
That's okay. I can resolve that off stream. See if we can get anything interesting, any interesting requests. I already have Code Assist enabled in the IDE, so I can just see if it has anything interesting to suggest for this. So here we are in the non-upload servlet, the test. Actually, I want to include I want to see if it comes to the same conclusion.
So yeah, that's what I was looking for. It was like when I so I should go like I was expecting when I put stuff in, but I was using the wrong file. I was like, will it tell me the same suggestion?
What do you suggest? Change this file. To Java 17. I'm also noticing that the font settings that I have for the rest of the IDE does not apply to Code Assist's window, the chat window. Yeah, it uses Java 17 feet. I don't think that system.getEnv is or .get default might be a Java 17 feature. Are you aware of, well, okay, actually, no, I think I already had the, have I lost my changes? So yeah, this is mocked static, this is mocked static. Any improvements to be made to the mocked static approach between Java 11 and Java 17? And I'm curious because this is going to be a different model. Okay, so it suggests a different approach. It suggests I use like the annotation approach.
Interesting.
To extend the whole file to have access to Mockito extensions classes rather than needing to static import each method. Or yeah, its methods rather than needing to static import each one. That actually might be a better improvement than the one suggested by Gemini in the ingestion service, because that actually does improve readability. It's just non-standard. Let me see if Mockito has any examples on that. Mockito extension. Yeah, extend with. Yep, that does look valid. And honestly, I like that contribution more than our original. So I may, late in the game, actually try updating to use this. Rewrite our test to use extend with and now, will this forfeit our performance increase from the previous approach? Probably, but it's really only a couple of references to storage options, so I think that's okay. I think readability is more important for the sample. Again, if this was a piece of code where it was being run constantly or hundreds of times to complete this test, then I would be more in favor of performance instead of readability. But in this case, I think I would rather have readability than performance. So let me...
Yeah, when it comes to samples, like this code is explicitly meant to help support people understand. Like one, it's meant to help make sure our samples are up to date and reliable to use. So we care a little bit, but also it like testing those samples, it shows people how to test their sample or their real code. And so them understanding our code is really important. So I go with your vote with readability over performance there.
So we're losing, I believe, 11 lines or 7 lines. No need for the mocked static. No need for these, but then are there still references to storage options? So let me storage options. So this is storage options mock. Storage options mock. Yeah. I mean, it seems equivalent. I want to see how it actually runs, and Dependabot will test my PR when I try to upload it. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with this suggested change, and there's likely going to be a little bit of polishing after the stream, but I do want to see if Gemini's contribution can actually make it in here, if it actually does improve readability. Let me reopen.
The one thing to note when you're making the PR is just make sure in the description you say that it was like Gemini assisted.
Yes.
Just helps us to be clear with folks where stuff is coming from and how we do it.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So I'll need the Mockito extension, and the rest is pretty much what we want. So yeah, we're gonna use inject mocks. That's probably gonna have to include that. It's gonna complain about that. And I'm gonna back out my half commit just to make sure it's all in one, and I can explain it.
This is so cool. I'm learning so much from you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
No, this has been a fun collaboration. I feel like I've learned a lot about like how Gemini suggests changes here. It was a lot more sparing than I thought. It was really only going for like if there's a performance increase or if there's a backwards incompatibility, then it was suggested a change. Otherwise, it was pretty. You had to prompt specifically to say, I want you to see if you can change anything about this. I want you to see if there's any other approach to this, which is different than I thought. But I think we're gonna call the actual code changes there. You can expect to see this push to the Java doc samples repo.
Awesome. Can I share what Gemini gave me back?
Please, yeah.
With a real file.
Yeah.
This was amazing. It was like over reliance on mocking. The test mocks almost everything. While mocking is useful, excessive mocking can lead to brittle tests. I'm like, okay, that's a very good point. Thank you, Gemini. It's got an inflexible test setup. It's got the unnecessary try with resources. You know how we were talking about try with resources? I was saying this is a block around mocked, this mocked buffered reader because it's redundant because the mocked reader doesn't manage real resources. And it's like, oh yeah, this is mocked. So, but Like, and then lack of error handling tests, and like showing it only verifies that you have a successful upload. It should also include tests for scenarios such as file upload failure, network errors, invalid file types, and missing file parameters. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's so good.
Those are all good suggestions, and I think a lot of that could be achieved by kind of flattening out the test, because this is one large kind of test everything test. We could have one setup test that sets up the mocks properly and make sure that the state is the same between them, and then we can have a test upload, test read, test error, test exception, like, you know, test a 502, test a 400, a malformed piece of data you're putting in, and kind of break it up into more digestible chunks. And I also, it's funny that you mentioned the try with resources, because that is a well-known common Spring vulnerability. It's like, it's not always unsafe, but it presents an option for resources to be left open and accessible, and either waste resources or even expose your service if somebody gets you to open up the right resource and leave it hanging. There have been CVEs that were based on like excessive use of try with resources. So there's a lot more in that response. Was that another Gemini chat?
Yeah, that's like the Gemini chat. And so to me, what this is, it's really interesting, like the different ways you can approach AI and then get help with it. And like, it's really useful as like a little buddy. And then, but also thinking about the context, we wouldn't necessarily want to do all of those different types of sample tests for every single sample.
No.
But I think there is a case to show that for like at least one, so that folks know here is the recommended practice of how you do this. And so like that's a potential new sample, a sample use case or documentation that shows like here is how you would test a doing Java app with App Engine, and here's like like recommended practices. So I don't know. This is thank you so much, because like your strategy, like yeah, there could be like little blocks and stuff. Thank you. This has been so educational.
Thank you for joining me, Jennifer. This has been a lot of fun. Yeah, I feel like this is something that I would want to bring in with a migration like this, just to have like new suggestions. Because as you saw, you know, you're going through a file, nothing really jumps out at you, and it gives you a decent suggestion to kind of track down. So yeah, good to have like a second set of eyes, even Gemini's eyes. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope that many of you join us for the season finale next week. We've had a lot of fun testing out what you can do within a 2 million token limit, and we're gonna. It's all good things have to come to an end, so we'll see where that leads us next week. All right. Any closing words, Jennifer?
No, just thank you so much. This has been a blast. And if you're interested in contributing to samples, we are always welcoming your contributions. We're available on GitHub in the Java, Golang, Python, Node.js. We love making things more easy and readable and approachable for folks to understand how to use Google Cloud Platform. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. See you next time.